Your textbook does a great job of talking about the variety of rules and principles and things that you need to know about typography. But there's one thing that to me is of crucial importance that it says several times, but the the ideas and the concepts are spread out throughout different chapters. It's the idea of display type and copy. And this is so rudimentary, this is so basic and important that I want to make sure at this point before we start formatting that everybody really understands this point. Display type, I think everybody gets pretty well. That's the fact that you can have big, bold headings, such as type size right here, which is the heading in this case for a paragraph. But, and headings is a whole nother topic that I'll be talking about in another video. But what I want to talk about is copy. Forgive me there. Copy is almost always the same. And some typography books, or you might hear this taught differently, but let me explain it to you. For years, you have been reading books and you have been reading articles on the internet and you have been looking at copy. Copy is at maximum normally 14 points, and that's for children and senior citizens. But normally, the way that you view copy is at about 10 points, 11 points, maybe 12. 12 is big. It's that default size you get whenever you open up a document in Microsoft Word or Adobe InDesign or any program where you do any sort of word processing. It's that default size that you submitted most of your homework in high school. And a lot of times students, they mess this part up. They're new typography students and they don't understand that copy actually needs to be as boring as it's always been. It needs to be a regular sans serif or a regular serif, similar to Arial or Times New Roman. There are other that's the sort of font I want you to think in your head. Seriously, typography houses, they buy the equivalent of Helvetica and but it's a different name, such as Universe or Frutiger or something like that. But it looks pretty much just like the sans serif you've been looking at and reading your whole life, or your serif text, whether it's Garamond or it's Minion. It doesn't really matter. It's a very basic looking regular serif, just like our book. Our book has what are probably bold 12-point sans serif headings, and then it has regular 10-point serif text, which is some traditional typeface. I couldn't begin to guess what it is because the serifs are so similar. But what students do a lot of times is, let me just say this to you. If it's over a paragraph, or if it's a paragraph, if there's 5 sentences involved, it's almost always going to be between 10 and 12 points, a regular serif or sans serif. So if you take it up to 18 points, or if you pick some sort of oddball decorative typeface, or even a typeface that's not decorative, like a script or a slab serif, or a modern or a modern serif, which has a lot of thick to thin transition in it, I'm going to tell you that you need to replace it. Basically, this is an easy lesson. That's just the fact that if you have five sentences or more, especially if you have multiple paragraphs, you're almost always going to keep your point size around 10 or 12 points, and you're going to be using a regular serif or sans serif. And if you don't do that, you're going to hear it from me. And I will tell you, for the years I've taught this class, I've always had students who for some reason haven't been able to grasp this concept, even though the book clarifies it. But the book is a little bit obscure about it. So I just want you to look at it. You've been looking at this your whole life. There's nothing new. This is pretty predictable. And that's what I want you to create whenever we're making articles, is recreate that. It might even seem boring. You might say it's too easy, but it's just what you're supposed to do. Now, there are other situations where you don't follow these rules at all. That's specifically when you're doing something artistic, or you're making like, for example, if the assignment where we make decorative quotes, the rules all change. But this is something I want you to understand, that very commonly books, magazines, um, newspapers, articles on websites, even Facebook and Pinterest and stuff like that, they follow these conventions. This is the point size we're used to seeing. So I hope that helps clarify this to everybody, what copy is, and when I say body copy, what I'm talking about. Let me also specify this and show you this. Indents and paragraph spacing is a complicated issue it's a simple issue that gets complicated. The first line, you'll notice here, where it says deciding, the first line is not, of the first paragraph is not indented because of the fact it doesn't need indented, because we know that's where you're going to start at, because you see the heading and this is the start. The second paragraph is indented in this case. And notice that there's no space between the paragraphs. If there was space between the paragraphs, you actually wouldn't even need the indent. So it's either indent or space, but you don't need to indent the first line of the first paragraph. And I repeat that a lot to students, so I want to make sure that I clarify that. There's a lot of information that's being delivered here, but something that's really crucial is really basic stuff, because we're all going to work with copy. If you're going to be a graphic designer, you're going to be working with body copy, and every poster has an area on it normally where there's some details about an event, and normally that's where you drop down to that smaller point size and you stop working with titles. And a lot of designs are basically the big title, the subtitle, the subtitle, and even the subtitle, and then you get down to the copy. And the copy is almost always the same as either serif or it's sans serif. Yes, we can bend these rules, but I don't want you to bend these rules for right now. I just want you to follow them and really get it down into your system. Basically, I will tell you this, I was self-taught until I went to college myself, and the way I learned was just looking at the professional designs that were out there. And I quickly learned about how copy worked. And I said, well, this is what it looks like. And I'm telling you, copy is 10 or 12 points. It's a regular serif or a sans serif, and it looks like the same stuff you've been reading your whole life. You might find a design or two or a book or two that doesn't follow the conventions that I'm kind of laying out for you. But I'm telling you, if you go to a library, take 20 books, look at them. You're going to notice this pattern. And I want you to follow this pattern whenever we're working with copy. Thanks for listening.